from Munich to Zurich. The Avro 146 regional jet encounters a serious incident. Shortly prior to landing, there is mist and a pungent smell. The co-pilot develops problems breathing and has to use his oxygen mask. The captain succeeds in landing the aircraft. The fumes disappear. The incident is reported to the authorities and investigated. The passengers remain uninformed. 1 year later, an official report is published. The cause: an engine oil leak filling the cockpit with fumes. According to the report, the co-pilot was extremely unwell. He was limited in his capacity to perform his duties as he encountered toxic exposure. Flight BU 937 from Stockholm to Malmö 6 years prior to the Swiss incident. Aboard were 68 passengers and a crew of 5. Everything was normal, but then Captain Niels Gomer recalls the event.
During the descent, my first officer, he complained he was feeling very sick and needed to put his oxygen mask on immediately. And I was very dizzy. A couple of seconds later, I felt so bad I was very close to throw up over the instrument panel.
A very critical situation. The co-pilot is already unable to move. The aircraft descends towards the sea with the autopilot engaged. Niels Gomer also has to don his oxygen mask.
And then we realized it's something with the air we're breathing.
With all modern aircraft, the outside air is compressed and heated by the jet engines. The technical term for this air is bleed air. But there are no filters in the system. Therefore, it is possible that the breathing air becomes contaminated with heated engine oil, especially when maintenance is an issue, or if a seal starts to leak or fail completely. And this happens more often than airlines would like to admit. The cockpit and the pilots get 100% bleed air. Flight attendants and passengers in the cabin usually get only 40 to 60% of this air, which is then recirculated. Such phenomena are well known to Susan Michaelis. Until 1997 she flew the same type of aircraft as Niels Gomer, the BEA 146 regional jet. Then she became sick, lost her pilot license and her job. She has done extensive research since and gathered all the known facts about such events. Today she is convinced
it's a massive cover-up, there's no doubt about that. The airline industry and governments around the world are effectively in denial. Those that are pretending to do something want to be seen to be doing the right thing, but effectively they're really burying the issue still today. And I've heard people, even my regulator, has called it the asbestos of the skies. This is a scandal.
In her book she gathered information about hundreds of such cases. This also includes Niels Gomer's incident.
It was like a shock. The deterioration of our mental condition was going so fast. Now I got the mask on. That was the last normal movement, physical movement I could do for about 5 to 10 minutes. I was paralyzed.
After some time receiving oxygen, the pilot's condition improves. Gomer succeeds in landing his aircraft at Malmö. He taxis to the gate and calls maintenance to open the engine cowlings.
I went out, saw it myself, dripping oil on a place where fresh air for breathing is supposed to pass before it enters the systems in the aircraft.
German airlines are affected as well. 19th of February 2007. This Eurowings BEA 146 encounters a serious in-flight incident. The flight is operated on behalf of Lufthansa from Birmingham to Frankfurt. Aboard are 61 passengers and a crew of 5. Only a few minutes after takeoff, both pilots suddenly feel sick and they get tunnel vision. Just in time, they succeed in donning their oxygen masks and they declare an emergency. The pilot succeeds in returning safely to Birmingham. The subsequent investigation revealed an oil leak in one engine, and so contaminated bleed air entered the cabin. Upon request, Eurowings disputes these official findings and denies that any oil residue would have entered the cabin air at all. But actually, the oil for modern jet engines contains numerous chemicals. Among those are also organophosphates as anti-wear agents. Despite that, oil cans do not currently contain specific warnings. Among those ingredients is also a powerful neurotoxin, tricresyl phosphate, TCP. The special high-performance oils for turbine-driven aircraft contain up to 5% TCP. Professor Christian van Etten is a toxicologist at the Canadian University of British Columbia. For more than 12 years he has researched TCP in the aircraft cabin environment. He warns,
TCP interferes with the electrical conduction within the nervous system and consequently paralyzes people.
As it is with Karen Burns, the former stewardess' health was ruined in just one flight. She and two of her colleagues suffer serious nervous system effects and Parkinson-like symptoms. When heated oil is inhaled, other symptoms may also develop, as is well known by former Northwest Airlines chief flight attendant Ruth Mendina.
I've noticed my passengers getting sick. I'd never witnessed that before, that many passengers getting sick. Now the passengers didn't know what was going on. We as a crew knew there was something happening on this airplane, but we didn't know at the time.
Today she is ill-health retired. Despite many crews and passengers suffering with so-called Aerotoxic Syndrome, today there still isn't really much known about the effects of these chemicals on the human body.
We have not had an opportunity to do so, and there seems to be a certain reluctance by the industry to allow proper studies to be taken place.
In Australia there are many known cases where crew and passengers suddenly became ill. Therefore, a public inquiry was initiated by the Australian Senate in the mid-90s.
The Australian Senate committee was a very strong one-year-long inquiry. They came up with some very strong findings, and the primary one was that the air was getting contaminated by engine oil. It wasn't just the BA 146, it was any aircraft that flies using bleed air, and that passengers and crews were getting sick. But the sad thing about it is that the airlines and the manufacturers provided false information to the Senate inquiry.
How the industry once tried to silently resolve the BA 146 air problem is now on public record in Australia. Already back in 1993, British Aerospace and Allied Signal silently paid millions of dollars to two Australian airlines as compensation. Only 14 years later, documents proving the secret agreement about long-known defects with the aircraft's air supply system resurfaced. They were made public, and they caused a scandal in the Australian Senate.
I am concerned that knowledge of these defects has been kept secret on commercial grounds. I am gravely concerned that the existence and content of these agreements have been deliberately withheld from a Senate inquiry. I seek leave to table the documents from which I have been quoting.
Apparently the Avro fleet, a derivative of the BA 146 operated by Lufthansa German Airlines, also suffers multiple events with contaminated cabin air. At the Labour Court, crew members are now suing their employer. Attorney Ulrich Fischer represents some plaintiffs. My clients were forced to inhale oil fumes at their workplace in the cockpit for years, and they believe an enormous impairment was the consequence, which led to the point that they cannot pilot any aircraft anymore for medical reasons. And what is the reaction of the employer? I would term it this way: the employer has gone very quiet.